Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this scripted commissioning panel. My name is Heather, and I'm here with ITV and Channel 4 drama heads Polly Hill and Caroline Hollick to discuss the importance of drama on the PSBs, their current commissioning strategies, and how they're balancing the rewards and challenges of linear and digital viewing. So, I think we can probably all agree that the past year or so has been an incredibly difficult one. And in some ways, drama was particularly tumultuous as lockdowns forced the delay of projects and social distancing changed film rules constantly. Yet simultaneously, I would say there's also been a lot of wins with high profile drama commissions such as Quiz and Des drawing in spectacular audiences during lockdown, and breakout hits like It's a Sin really deeply resonating with audiences and ballooning on demand viewing. And most recently, World Productions' Line of Duty broke records, becoming the fifth most watched show across all UK channels since records began. So, given all of this, I'd like to start by asking you both broadly, how would you assess the current state of drama production in the UK? So, Polly, shall I start with you, and then we'll go to you, Caroline?
I think you've just said it yourself, haven't you? I mean, I think all channels actually, BBC, Channel 4, and obviously, I'd say in ITV are doing really well in terms of finding shows that are resonating with big audiences and finding really distinctive and original stories to tell. So I think in terms of what we're making and what audience is seeing, I think we're doing really well.
And
Yeah, I
Caroline?
would totally agree. Yeah, I mean, It's a Sin has had over 25 million views on all four. It was really exciting to start the year after a really difficult year in 2020 with a show that really seemed to land with audiences. And I think the other thing the PSBs can do, as opposed to the streamers, is really focus on what our own audiences want. We don't have to think about global reach. We don't have to think about how we're landing outside of the needs of our own audience. And I think that's probably why there have been so many really great shows coming out of BBC, ITV, and Channel 4 over the last few years.
Mm. And how have you guys been bouncing back? What's on the horizon at the moment? What are you excited about? Polly, I'll go with you again.
We've got more new drama, I think, on ITV than we've ever had. And despite, the challenges that we're all facing, we're investing more in drama. We're continuing to make a huge amount, and we've got a really strong autumn with a lot of new shows coming through. So, we've got two really interesting domestic thrillers from Hollington Drive by Sophie Petzel with Anna Maxwell Martin in it, and Angela Black from Jack and Harry Williams with Joe Froggatt. And then we've got some really beautiful true stories. So we've got Martin Clunes returning in Manhunt with another true story of Clive Sutton, and we've got Stephen, which is the second film to the murder of Stephen Lawrence that ITV did some years ago, which is returning to look at how two of those boys at the time, were brought to trial. So, some really interesting and different, slate of shows coming through for the autumn.
Fantastic. And Caroline?
Yeah, so we've got a really exciting new crime thriller coming up at the end of this month, Before We Die, which is a brilliant remake of a Swedish thriller, which we're really excited about, starring Leslie Sharp. We've also got My Name is Lizzie, starring Neve Algar, which is our kind of take on a true crime story with a very sort of different approach, I think, to the way that a lot of true crimes panned out in the past. It's my favourite genre. I love it. I watch all of them completely avidly, that Holly makes so brilliantly. But this is a very female-led approach about an undercover operation told from the point of view of a female undercover officer. Also really excited about our Jack Thorne single, directed by Mark Munden, starring Stephen Graham and Jodie Comer. Help is the working title, which is about the coronavirus crisis hitting a care home in the first lockdown last year. So it's a pretty epic emotional piece looking at the consequences of something that we've lived through in really recent history, but with an incredibly emotional story at its heart. This relationship between Jodie and Stephen, they've wanted to work together for a long time, and we're really, really excited to see them on screen together. And we've also got a really gloriously gripping psychological thriller called Close to Me, starring Connie Nielsen, probably best known to UK audiences as Wonder Woman's mum in the Wonder Woman movies, and Chris Eccleston, which is a co-pro for us. We wouldn't, it's a sort of probably a little bit more mainstream than a lot of the more original stuff that we've been commissioning, but it's gloriously entertaining, and it's really great to we've got a couple of shows with older women right at the heart of them, which I think is really important. We're not just a youth focused channel. I think we're fairly.
Yeah. And although the BBC were unable to make it today, I do feel like I have to discuss the record-breaking success of Line of Duty, which was only a couple of weeks ago, seeing millions of people tuning in every Sunday night, which must have been incredibly encouraging for both of you guys as well. So with an increasing emphasis from commissioners on putting digital platforms first when they're thinking about commissioning, has the success of programs like Line of Duty made you think twice about linear viewing, or how do you kind of balance that demand for on-demand versus linear shows?
I think we've always, obviously at ITV, we've always been focused on linear viewing. I think, and it's brilliant to see shows do that well. I mean, on any channel, it's wonderful to see dramas do that well. But I think what's been interesting for us is that, looking this year at, it's not one or the other for us. It's not, we commission it shows that we hope will resonate with a huge, big mainstream audience. And what we've looked at the beginning of the year, which did really well for us, is just offering dramas to the audience however they want to watch them. So we did that with The Bay, and we did it with Finding Alice, and they were both linear, and then they were offered on the hub as a kind of box set, because we're just aware that people want to watch things in different ways. For some people, the linear viewing works really well, and for some people, they want to watch it all at once. So, I think it's just about trying to find the right shows. I think we're clear about. I just think we're evolving in terms of how we offer them to the audience and how they want to consume them.
Like ITV, we've had a really similar approach in terms of thinking about how different audiences want to view dramas. So It's a Sin, after the first episode went out, was made fully available on All 4 for people who wanted to binge the whole series. But actually the viewing figures held up really well week on week. There are a lot of people who really enjoyed sort of making an appointment to view on a Friday, which is absolutely what happened with It's a Sin, with Line of Duty as well. So I think it's important that there are that people want to watch things in different ways. But what we are doing is looking at drama that skews a bit younger, that in half hours, that we know people really, really like to consume on All 4. So we've got a drama that we're about to start filming this summer called The Birth of Daniel F. Harris, written by new writer Pete Jackson, which is sort of about what it means to be a teenage boy in the modern world. And that's the format of that in half hours is very much with a view to people who want to be able to consume the whole thing at their leisure, rather than worrying overly about the linear TX. And also with Ackley Bridge, actually, we had a big rethink of Ackley Bridge this year. The series has just gone out, where we've moved it to an earlier TX and changed it from hour-long episodes to 10 half-hour episodes. And it's done great guns on All 4 for us. So sometimes we do think about, particularly with those younger skewing shows, making sure that they're in a kind of format that feels really bingeable for the audience.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask that kind of, are there particular types of drama that you would be more keen to focus and place on things like ITV Hub and All 4 versus a weeklier TX? And of course, you're saying that you can do both and that both often works very well. But it kind of sounds to me a little, Caroline, like you're kind of aiming the slightly youth skewing programs to do well on All 4, but say, I don't know, a big crime thriller where you want to be on a cliff edge every week and then people are going to tune in week after week. Does that make a big difference?
I think We will still probably make a lot of our big crime dramas available on all four because we know that's what audiences want. But at the same time, we definitely think when we're making those shows about episode hooks, about those hooks that take you in and out of our breaks because of the way that a lot of people want to watch when it goes out. So you probably, but at the same time, I mean, all drama just needs to be hooky and grabby. Nobody wants to kind of get bored. And I think whether you're making a show for linear TV or for with a mind for how it might do on online, you've got to just tell stories that people are going to be really engaged by. So I think we always start with the story.
They also, clearly it works better for serialized storytelling rather than episodic storytelling, which is a lot of what we do actually, and what we're making. So it would be less bingeable, the kind of weekly story of the week type crime shows, than it is the serialized type crime shows or non-crime shows. But I think we're looking at it as thinking it's about how the audience want to consume it, and actually the audience, the consolidated audience is the one you look at rather than the live overnights if you do it like that, because you do take away some of the live viewing. It doesn't all disappear at all. You know, you'll still have a strong live viewing, but some of those people will have watched it, binged on it, but you'd still get those viewers are still there. You just look at it as a consolidated, and I think that's fine. I think it's time to start offering audiences an option of how they watch drama.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking more broadly now, I'd like to ask what is working well on each of your channels right now, and also give me a bit of a flavour of your shopping list at the moment, as I'm sure a lot of producers will be watching and will be very curious what you guys are each looking for. So Caroline, if we start with you.
Well, I think Channel 4, our driving ambition is always to feel like an alternative to what's on the mainstream channels, to always feel distinctive and to sort of shine a light on who we are today. I mean, all drama wants to tell stories that are distinctive, but I think we definitely put having a fresh vision and something new to say right at the heart of all of our shows. So that's probably the thing we ask for most, something that feels surprising and different. I think Adult Material that went out last autumn is a really, really good example of a show that's very hard to imagine sitting on any other channel, and probably not even on any of the streamers either, because it was such a specifically British story about a woman making her way in the British porn industry. And we're always looking for epic, limited series, I guess, mini series that don't have to return, with passionate authored voices. It's a Sin being an example of a show that can really, really land across the board. It did really well with younger audiences and an older audience who love the 80s vibe and the kind of near history, the recent history storytelling. We're also always in the market for ideas for returning series. We've got a great returning series that goes into production this year called Screw, which is a prison drama with a collection of characters that starring Jamie Lee from Derry Girls, Nina Sasanya. It's got a really comic edge, but it's steeped in authenticity, and that's what's really important for us. Rob Williams, the writer, was a prison visitor himself for a long time. And Channel 4's got a great history in really entertaining gang shows with a bit of bite, from Queer as Folk through to Teachers and This Is England. So we never have enough of them on the slate. We're always looking for new ideas like that. And also, as I mentioned before, the younger skewing, usually 8x30 series in the vein of The End of the Fucking World. We need to stand up against shows like Normal People, like I May Destroy You, I Hate Susie, big, bold, authored ideas that again, just really shine a light on who we are today, but can also be really gripping and entertaining.
We are obviously looking for mainstream populist drama, but obviously it has to be incredibly authored. It has to be incredibly British. I think, you know, we are making shows for this audience, so we're looking to represent stories of the UK that can obviously have an international feel, but largely on ITV, shows that work feel incredibly real and rooted. So we don't do well, and we don't try and do things that are too heightened. So we tend to do a lot of crime, and we tend to do very well with a lot of crime. So we do a lot of true crime stories. As you've said, you know, we had great successes with Quiz and White House Farm and Honour and Des last year, and we started really well with Pembrokeshire Murders, so we continue to do those, and we always look to try and find shows that feel different to the last ones that we've made. I never want to get into a situation where we feel like we're replicating something even within the same genre. So we're always looking at what those next stories would be. And within crime, we do straight detectives. And again, the same thing for me really is just always looking for something original in what might feel quite a familiar genre. Crime, we watch a lot of crime. So how do we ring the changes? How do we offer the audience something that feels different and distinctive, and bold and original, but just in a different bold and original way to a Channel 4 bold and original? We're always looking to do something that captures the audience imagination, because they're only going to come if it feels fresh and it's distinctive and brilliant. Actually, the bar's incredibly high for everybody. So and so then we'll do lots of thrillers, but they also have to be very different and quite rooted and emotionally real. We don't go too far from that. And then the biggest challenge for me is finding those shows outside of crime. And we've got some really interesting ones coming up. We've got a brilliant new love story called You and Me, which is from a new writer, and it's got the sort of all the twists and turns of a thriller, but it's a love story. There's no dead bodies. And we've got Riches coming up, which is a kind of aspirational big family saga. So we're trying to find those shows that can offer the sort of story motor, because I think the audiences are really story hungry, and you need to be able to find those twists and turns and keep people coming back and finding that sort of addictive storytelling. But outside of crime genres is the biggest challenge for me, really.
And how can producers have a pitch that kind of stands out to you? I imagine you're always inundated with stories. I can hear that you're saying, an authenticity of voice is incredibly important. Is there anything else that really, when it comes through your inbox or it comes through a pitch portal, you just get really excited by an idea? I know that's a hard question, but Caroline, I'll pitch it to you first.
Oh, sorry, did you say Caroline?
No, you can go. You can go if you've got an answer prepared.
I was thinking it's something in the story that very simply makes you want to hear more. If somebody has a new crime show, a new detective show, or a family show, or a love story, it's something in the pitch that you realize is quite a simple sell to an audience that feels fresh. There's something distinctive and fresh in the setup. And then obviously complex in the storytelling. We're not asking for simple storytellings, but I think that the way in which we hook an audience in and the way in which will be the same as our own interest in it when it's pitched. So I think something that you can pitch simply, actually, and that the originality of it can be seen quite clearly.
Yes, for us, we talk a lot about having a clear proposition, so that you understand exactly what the story is about when you first read. And that doesn't mean it has to be baseline or obvious. As Polly says, a lot of it is thinking, gosh, I need to know more. But the clarity of the proposition is really, really important, because audiences are so well served and they're so sophisticated. If they start watching a show and they don't really know what it is, it's just a collection of interesting characters, it's really hard for them to stick with it. There's got to be a really clear through line. You've got to promise what that story is and make sure it's not just plot. It's not just a rendition of what's going to happen. It's a promise of why these things are going to happen and what that means. And I think if you can get that into a couple of pages, then you're onto a winner.
Very nice. So another way that I suppose you can bring in a large audience quite quickly is with major talent being attached. So are you keen to be always pitched ideas that are led by major talent? And how do you kind of balance that with growing new talent and finding those new authentic voices both on the page and on the screen? Ooh, I'll go with Polly. Sorry.
We don't often get pitched shows with talent attached. It can work in your favour if you've got a massive name attached, for us, without doubt. But in the end, it will be the idea. If So it's not necessary. You need a good idea or a good script or a good pitch for us to develop a script. And if you've got a great script, I'm always confident that you'll get a great team of actors to come and a great director. So that's not my first worry, really. And in terms of the balance, I think we absolutely do, and particularly in writers, I think there's a real push for us to have new writers and new voices, and we are doing that by commissioning those shows. In terms of on screen, it's a balance within the cast, really, and depending on the ages of your cast, in terms of whether you're breaking through new talent or you're offering an audience a much loved actor. So I think it is always a mix and always a balance, and dependent on the idea.
So similarly, when we always start with the idea and the script, it's also really tricky when people attach talent early on, because they end up breaking your heart because they're not available. So we need to get the script right and get the story right. But big talent does play a huge role in ensuring that your show can put its head above the parapet in a really crowded market. Deadwater Fell, that we had on screen last year, had David Tennant starring in it, and Cush Jumbo, and obviously they're really recognisable faces, and it really helped that show kind of punch through and really land with audiences. But at the same time, our remit is to nurture new talent. Another show that we've got filming this year is called The Undeclared War, which is by Peter Kosminski, which he's directing as well. And the star of that show is a newcomer called Hannah Kalik Brown. But the other cast, her supporting cast, include Simon Pegg, Mark Rylance, Adrian Lester, and that's a really, really brilliant way of seriously breaking some new talent in a show that people will come to because they know that Peter's a great talent, that there are recognisable faces in it, but we've got the space to showcase a complete newcomer and launch her into the world in a way that's really exciting. She's a phenomenal talent.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So another question that I had for you guys, which is, how are you dealing with large scale kind of set pieces at the moment? So it feels as though drama needs to be on an ever more ambitious scale, and yet budgets are quite squeezed. So I wanted to know how you guys have been dealing with those challenges. I'm just going to start picking again. Polly, I'll go with you first.
Sorry, I was talking over Caroline last time, so I was just waiting politely.
I know, I'm just going to start choosing.
It's like school.
There's lots of elements to that question, because ambition is absolutely at the heart of what we do. It doesn't always mean massive, huge production values of big set pieces. I think one of the most ambitious pieces we did last year was Dares, that as a channel that does a lot of those true crimes, that show started at the end of what we would normally class the end, when he says, "Yes, it's me." And actually there was 2 interviews that took place, one with the police, obviously, and one with the biographer, and therefore quite theatrical in its nature and brilliantly done. But the fact that it punched through in such a huge way with a big audience, not just got great reviews, but it properly connected, I thought was brilliant, because it wasn't the most obvious way. It wasn't starting with the beginning of that murder and investigating it through to its conclusion. So I don't think ambition always has to be, as I said, the biggest budgets. In terms of how production is managing, I mean, post-COVID, when we went into the first lockdown, I didn't know how we were going to get it going again. And it was incredible that by August we were back shooting, and we have not had to stop since. So that's a testament to all the incredible crews, producers that are back, getting everything back together. I'm not allowed on set because that's the sort of nature of where we are at the moment. So and in terms of budgets, it's all about the story, and sometimes, as I said, the most interesting pieces can be the most domestic and intimate pieces. And in terms of how you fund those, it's always been the case that we buy the UK and the rest of the world is up for grabs. So depending on how big a budget the show is depends on what sort of co-producing partners you bring in and what that does. But it's again, we find the right partners for the right shows, and we have the right money to make them. But not everything. It's not one fit all for drama. Some shows don't need big co-producing partners, and some do.
Yeah, similarly, we take every single project on its own merits. I mean, every story is so different. They've all got different needs and different setups, really. So it's really hard to have a one-fits-all strategy. We're really open to co-production. It's a Sin was a co-production with HBO Max, and actually, It's a Sin was a period piece, which is always expensive. It took place in London. There were scenes in New York. Actually, the entire show was shot in Manchester because the production was so brilliantly clever and with their sort of judicious use of CGI, which, as somebody who lives in the north themselves, I'm particularly pleased that we've proven that we don't even need London or New York as a location to make those shows on that sort of scale work. So yeah, where necessary, we partner. Undeclared War is a partnership with Peacock, which is an American streaming service, and that's allowing us to make that show on quite a big scale. But even under COVID, the COVID restrictions that we're under, we've got really, really rigorous protocols that allow us to keep a sense of ambition in our filming, but also keep everybody safe. So there's a lot of moving parts. It's probably Polly and I are both looking a bit twitchy by this point in the pandemic, because just keeping the show on the road is a complex thing. But you've got to have ambitious storytelling, because that's what audiences want, and you just have to find really creative, interesting ways to deliver that ambition.
And all of our shows, apart from a couple, have all the ones you've seen, all the ones coming up, have all been shot since August, so under the COVID restrictions. And although it's much harder to shoot and takes longer, the audience don't know. You can't tell when you watch the show. So it's been incredible what's been achieved.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. It's a testament to the incredible work of production companies around the UK, isn't it? Speaking of co-productions and SVODs, while we're on the subject, how are you kind of interacting with international producers, international broadcasters and co-productions? Is that an ever-increasing thing that you guys are looking into as a way of ensuring that projects can be ambitious? I'll go to you, Polly.
It's always been the case for years that we've had good partners with Americans mainly, or the SVODs. And it's not the start of a conversation that we have. So what normally happens is we'll develop an idea for ITV with the producers, and then once it's green lit, they'll go off and find out how to fund the rest of it, because as I said, we don't pay for all of it. We pay for the UK territory. So depending on how much more needs to be raised, it's dependent on what sort of co-producing relationship you're going into. That's largely driven by the producer. Sometimes I will have a conversation with whoever that partner is, but largely it's to do with the producer in terms of going out and having that conversation with all the people who are interested and seeing who the best partner is. It's always about finding the person who wants to make the same show as us. And then it's so far been only a good, positive thing that there's been such a huge appetite for drama and British drama for the right shows. So yeah, I mean, we've worked with most people, and I haven't had a bad experience.
No complaints.
No, it means that we're able to make the dramas that we want to be making. I mean, not everything on ITV needs huge budgets. Drama is expensive, so without doubt, whatever happens, drama is expensive. But we're not trying to make hugely epic, because we make so much of our shows are real and a lot of it contemporary. There is some periods of, but largely it's quite contained. So it's all about the story, and it's all about the characters, and it's all about, rather than how big the budget is. But if we need a big budget, then it's because the show needs it. And if the show, because there's such a huge appetite internationally for drama, then you'll find the right partner.
Yeah, I would second that absolutely. I think what's really great about working with international partners now is that you pressure to put an American character in there to make it work for an American audience. I think particularly the streamers have their audiences really love British drama. They've had the chance to see quite a lot of it. And the other thing that's quite exciting about co-production is that you can feel a sort of weight of excitement about a show. We had this with the excitement building about It's a Sin after it launched here in the UK. That the kind of critical success of it in the UK really resonated in the States in the build up to its premiere on HBO Max. It also played out on Canal Plus and in Australia, in France, and out in Australia on Stan. And the kind of global nature of social media and the way things travel really well just allowed the show, I think, to feel like it had even more cultural reach and weight than it did when it just went out in the UK. So I think yes, finding the right partner who wants to make the same show as you is the most important thing. What we would never ever want to do is put producers in a position where they were torn in different directions and trying to serve different masters. But really great partners, and collaboration is really fun. And in an ideal world, you're all pulling in the right direction. You've all got the same notes, and I think there are a lot of really great partners out there. So yeah, we really enjoy co-production when it feels right for the show.
And for those smaller drama production companies who may not have international connections or co-production partners that they work with regularly, it could probably be quite daunting seeing, these huge, beautifully made programs. And is there room for smaller drama productions to get ideas off the ground, typically at a lower price point? Polly, sorry.
That's fine. I don't think it has to be at a lower price point. I think you have to find the right story. So if somebody pitches me a story and I think it feels right for ITV, I'll develop that story and make it with them. I really am looking for good stories, and I'm looking for new takes, often, as I said, on familiar genres. So a new voice, new producers. My door is open and I am constantly talking to people. If it's the right show, then we will help support getting that made and getting that off the ground. But again, a good script will catch fire. As Caroline said, it's exciting. Once it goes around, you'll sort of feel that there's interest around. So, if you've got a good script, it all comes from there, really.
We're actually really interested in looking at ways of delivering drama at a bit less than the full Channel 4 tariff, really as a way of just getting more hours of TV off the ground. Obviously, we'll always pour all of our resources into big shows like It's Sin or Deadwater Fell or, My Name is Lizzie. But if we can find ways of, again, usually creatively collaborating with other co-producers or finding other ways of delivering shows at a slightly lower tariff. We make a series called I Am that's directed by Dominic Savage. The second series is coming back this year, which is an anthology series developed in Dominic's very distinctive improvisational style. I wish I could say improvisational. It's quite improvisatory style. And this year we've got some amazing talent as part of that series: Saran Jones, Letitia Wright, Leslie Manville. But the nature of the way the films are shot, it's built around one lead character, so limited cast, limited locations. It's a really, really great way of delivering incredibly high impact, really emotional drama at a cost that just allows us to have more hours in the mix across the board. So we're interested in looking at different ways of funding dramas like that. We always want all the money on screen. It's never about cutting costs and trying to do things on the cheap. But there are interesting co-productions out there, acquisitions, early acquisitions, that sort of thing, where we're able to do things at a slightly different tariff. So very open to having those conversations, whether you're a really experienced production company or whether you're a newer production company who's just got a really creative way of approaching that.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that. It's always nice to have opportunities for different sized production companies. Kind of carrying on from that, how are you ensuring that there is fair representation both on and off screen of different ethnic minority groups, socioeconomic groups, for instance? What are your kind of diversity policies and how are they being enacted? If I'll start with you, Caroline.
Well, it's baked into our remit. Channel 4's remit, government remit, is to represent voices who are not necessarily heard in the mainstream media. So it's in everything that we do, and but I think the industry has been having such a reckoning over the last few years. I would never say that was peculiar to Channel 4, but we are working really hard to ensure representation, both on screen and off screen. We always start with the writer's vision, and having a really it's really important to have a breadth of writers who are telling stories about who we are today. And if you can do that and you can start with the writer, you can really ensure authentic representation. But we're also working really hard specifically to improve our disabled representation, actually. I think on screen we've done really well with Black, Asian and minority ethnic performers. We're working hard to improve the representation off screen in terms of writers and also crew. Hollyoaks has improved their writers, directors, senior management across line. There's been a huge kind of change in the levels of reputation, the levels of Black, Asian and ethnic minority representation that Hollyoaks has managed to achieve, which culminated in recently showing our unconscious bias episode, which is one episode of Hollyoaks built around our character Martine, played by Kelly Bryan, which was absolutely reflecting a Black woman's experience of microaggressions, which is quite a radical thing, I think, for a soap to do. And that came from the weight of representation behind the camera in terms of writers and directors that have been part of that process of change happening at Hollywood the last year. So, yeah, I think really great stories come out of that kind of changing representation. So it's something that we're always searching for and always seeking to improve upon.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd completely agree. I mean, we're moving really, really fast to kind of change, not just on screen. I think you'll see a very different look in terms of ITV drama next year. We're really trying to look at who's leading our shows. I think we've always been good in having a kind of really diverse mix in terms of the cast, but I think it's really important in terms of who leads our shows. So. And also really who's making our shows. So I did a massive push with our team in terms of really reaching out to writers and putting a much more, trying to really shake up who's coming to write an ITV show in terms of race, class. We're again doing that with disability, looking at and so I think that will start to come through. It really starting to come through in terms of who's making our shows, who's writing our shows, and therefore what representation is on screen. And added to that, we are constantly having conversations, as the whole industry are, in terms of returning series, and again getting a much better mix in terms of off screen, in terms of who's directing them, who's in the crew. We're in a real state of change, and a good change in this industry, and ITV absolutely wants to be right in the heart of that, and we're doing a huge amount in terms of making sure that that our shows are much as representative and diverse as we can.
Yeah, it's really good to hear. So returning back to what you're currently commissioning, I'm going to kind of ask the reverse of that, which is there anything that isn't really working on the channels? Any kind of market that is just a little overly saturated, or anything that the pandemic may have halted or hindered? Genre topics that just don't really work for you guys? Caroline, I'll go to you.
So I think the genre that I've been saying no to the most since I started the job is dystopia. I did get pitched a lot of it when I first started, and I think partly Channel 4 is the home of Handmaid's Tale, which I think is sort of the greatest dystopia on screen right now. And we've got another series of that coming this year. But I think it's you know, I do feel, I've said this before, I feel like we're all living through rather dystopian times, and that doesn't feel to me like the way that I want to reflect who we are today. Another genre that's tricky for Channel 4, I think because it's being done so well elsewhere, is pure YA. So young adult drama aimed very, very specifically at a teenage audience. We love young drama, we lean into it, but it has to have a universality of theme that allows it to break out of just being aimed very specifically at that audience, in the way that I think Netflix has managed to own that genre so brilliantly. So yeah, that's probably the two things that we're looking to avoid. But for us, it's always about the approach. I don't think I would say no to almost any other genre if it had an approach that felt different.
We have for a while just slowed down on period drama. We have, period adaptations, which have always been so popular. There seems to be not so much interest from the audience in those, so we have just pulled back on those. And anything that's too heightened, I think, really struggles on ITV. So we tend not to make those sorts of shows. So it's really about finding the point of difference in something that feels very rooted and quite real. It can be tonally, they can be very different, but I think it'd be very hard for us to make something set in space, or something that was completely so far in the future, for example, or anything like that. They can work really well, but not necessarily land that well on ITV.
Yeah. So to conclude, I wanted to ask both of you, what's the best way that producers can pitch to you and your team? What is it on whether it's a document or a sizzle, that just gets you guys really excited? And is there anything that you'd like to call out for specifically right now, or any genres that are really intriguing you? And I think that'll be a good place to end things. So Caroline, we'll start with you.
So if you go onto our 4Producers website, Drama 4Producers Drama, we lay out our commissioning priorities really clearly there, and it also tells you exactly how to submit ideas. If you've got an existing relationship with a commissioning editor, then continue that relationship, send material into them, send material into me, but you just need to make sure you CC the right people, because my inbox is mostly a living hell. And I hate missing anything. Just a message to all the producers out there who might be waiting for us to get back on some things. The whole development team was furloughed for several months last year, and we're still playing catch up. So I'm really sorry. If you nudge us, we will always be really apologetic and get back as soon as we can. In terms of what we're looking for, I think, as I said earlier, authored miniseries is a really, really important to us. 4-parters, 5-parters, that sort of shape. From the very sort of very individual voices, such as Lucy Kirkwood with Adult Material, or Russell with It's a Sin, through to the more kind of commercial 4-parters like Daisy Coulam's Dead Water Fell, and Emilia Di Girolamo's My Name is Lizzie. They're a great way to tell an epic story. I keep saying to people, who are your amazing feature film writers who've got an idea that maybe feels a bit too big for one film. So we're always looking for those. I'd definitely put that right at the top of my shopping list right now.
Fantastic. And Polly?
We are always looking for things that can feel like big events on ITV. We are trying to appeal to and entertain as much of the British public as possible. So it needs to be able to cut through in quite a noisy way, but a mainstream way, and feel event-like. So whether or not it's true crime, or whether it's Too Close, shows that feel that they're got something that can get people talking. I think that's really what we're looking for. And anything outside of crime, I think the crime, if you've got a really great take on a crime series, obviously pitch that to us. But anything that feels mainstream outside of that crime space. You know, that's the biggest challenge for us, and some things we're always looking for. So if you've got a great story that sits in that space, and in terms of pitching to us, I think unless you've got a script that you want us to look at, which often people do, and we're happy to read them. But if it's an idea, I think keep it simple. You know, just as I said earlier, when you're asking, you know, what we're looking for, if it should be something where you can just pitch it very simply and put it in an email and send it. I've got a tiny team, so you can just send it to one of us and one of us will get back to you. But I think most people should have a relationship with one of us. You know, we do meet anyone who knocks on our door and wants to hear about ITV drama. So I think most people will have a relationship with one of either me or my team, and it's just a dialogue. You know, it's about watching what goes out on ITV, looking at what we're commissioning, having conversations with us, and trying to find the piece that you think we're not telling and pitching it to us.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, in terms of the best approach, I do find things like sizzle reels or very kind of glossy brochures about an idea, they can be great, but ultimately I just want to know what the story is. What is the story? What's going to happen? Why is it going to happen? What are you promising is going to unfold? So that's always for me more important than maybe putting together lots of beautiful photos with wish list actors and that sort of thing. But that also might be that I'm a bit old school, but I think really have a sense of what the story is.
I agree. I think, you know, we all know what the ideal cast would be. You know, you really don't need to send that unless you've got someone attached, obviously. And we all know that we'll want to shoot it beautifully. And I agree. I think it's about saying what's the story and knowing what you want to do, because we're buying your idea. So for me, it's always like saying, do I get what the pitch is? Do I think that's right for ITV? And then just a rough sense of where you want to take that story, you know, because then we're supporting you to tell that story, and we think that's a great fit for ITV, and we'll do our best to make sure you can make the best version of that.
And I think also we're finding it really helpful if people can think about what sort of slot they feel the show is right for. We're really clear on the website what slots we're commissioning for and what sort of shapes. So if you have a think about that, that really helps, because sometimes we do get pitched things that feel like a single drama that we're not really looking for, or it really just helps to streamline whether this show is right for us. So I would definitely recommend having a look at the website. And I'm slightly shunting that, but it's just really good to get it all set down, I think, and make sure that you're really, really targeting the right ideas at the right channels, because we don't want to waste your time.
Yeah, I mean, I often read shows and I think they can be wonderful. They're just not a good fit for ITV. You know, I think Caroline's right. You know, you need to look and just make sure that we're the right home for it, because sometimes I'm turning things down, not because I don't think they're good, but just because I genuinely don't think we're the right home to make that hit. And there are so many different places now to go and sell your dramas to. You just need to make sure that the show you want to make is the sort of show that would sit comfortably on ITV, as opposed to any other platform.
The moral of the story is do your homework.
which most people do absolutely know the difference between them all. It's just yeah. We also don't do a lot of single films. I do get pitched a lot of single films, and we just don't tend to do those either. I think, you know, we're in the business of long form storytelling rather than
and we are mostly. We do them I think because we've done them very occasionally. We did obviously Brexit, the Uncivil War, the James Graham piece. We've got this Jack Thorne piece coming up. We will do a single if it feels incredibly urgent. It feels like a story that absolutely has to be told right now, which is what you get from those two stories. But otherwise, really, we're much, much more excited about stories that feel that they can sustain over a number of episodes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me and sharing your insights with me today. I can't wait to binge my way through all these upcoming dramas, and thank you again for joining. It's been really nice talking to both of you.